It was the 20th day of January, 1952. A combat-weary Army lieutenant had just returned from a top-secret intelligence-gathering mission. Following debriefing, he pledged to reveal an amazing story of courage and sacrifice, a tale that was destined to remain classified for 46 years. I happened to be that lieutenant. Now, many recall that the Korean War became known as the Forgotten War. But for the hundreds of thousands who fought and bled upon Korea's God-forsaken battlefields, it will never be forgotten. Think about it. 33,686 Americans died. Over 100,000 suffered battlefield wounds, and 8,100 remain unaccounted for to this very day. That brutal forgotten war had its beginning on 25 June 1950, when the Army of North Korea launched an all-out military attack upon South Korea. Their goal was to place the entire Korean peninsula under communist rule. Within days, a superior North Korean army had driven unprepared United Nations forces into a shrinking defense perimeter near the southernmost Korean port of Busan. The Korean War had quickly turned into a bloodbath. Immediate, decisive military action was demanded if certain defeat was to be avoided. General of the Army Douglas MacArthur directed a brilliant, successful landing at the port of Incheon. The North Korean Army's supply lines for men and material was severed. A powerful military offensive drove the North Koreans backward. Within weeks, the fighting reached the Yellow River that divides North Korea from Manchuria. You may have heard that rumors abound in every war. The Korean War was no different. Word shot throughout the ranks that the enemy had been brought to their knees, that the war would be short and Americans would be home by Christmas. But this tall tale failed to gel for the thousands who were engaged in mortal combat along a hostile battle line. Sadly, those who were operating within the intelligence trenches had botched it by failing to uncover and report an awesome threat by the Chinese. At the peak of fighting, General of the Army MacArthur met with President Harry S. Truman on Wake Island. Truman demanded to know what it would take to end the war. During a heated discussion, MacArthur assured his boss from Independence, Missouri, that the United Nations forces would prevail. The five-star general bragged that victory was within sight, and there was absolutely no possibility that the Chinese army would take on the military might of the United States. But MacArthur's drum roll assessment proved to be dead wrong. The Far East Command's deadly miscalculation of enemy strength and intention would lead to the loss of thousands of American lives. Truman exploded when informed that 30,000 to 40,000 crack Chinese troops had poured unopposed across the Yalu. It was a bitter pill for the president to swallow when he learned that the UN military was running like hell from a mighty enemy. But the Chinese wasn't the only enemy. It was the beginning of a harsh winter where temperatures in the mountains plunged to below zero. Frostbite commenced to claim thousands of casualties. In the midst of a bloody withdrawal, a well-known American field commander was questioned by a reporter who asked if the commander's troops were in full retreat. The commander retorted with, "Hell, we're not retreating. We're attacking in a different direction." Frostbite and enemy action took an awesome toll. As battlefield reports reached the Oval Office, Truman concluded that the intelligence community had dropped the ball. During the early stage of the war, no one at the top realized the depth of danger posed by a well-organized, well-trained, well-equipped, and highly motivated Chinese army. Why was this so? Could it be that even a greenhorn intelligence analyst should have concluded that rapid buildup of battle-ready enemy troops north of the Yellow River was a clear indication of the Chinese intention to enter the war. Valiant and badly mauled UN forces continued to fall back while hordes of Communist Chinese and North Korean troops rolled southward. Seoul, the capital of South Korea, fell for the second time under the might of a fanatical enemy. UN forces gained the upper hand only after overextended logistical lines slowed the enemy's advance. Thankfully, the tide of combat turned, and Communist forces were stopped by reinforced UN units. Guns once more faced to the north when General Matthew B. Ridgway issued the order, "Never break contact with the enemy." A powerful United Nations military offensive ripped into the retreating enemy ranks. Because of their overwhelming numerical strength and an enormous flow of supplies, the North Korean and Chinese units were able to reestablish a formidable battle line. American casualties commenced to mount upon battle-scarred hills. That blood-soaked battle line would eventually become a military demilitarized zone. It's a strange paradox to note that the Korean DMZ ended up very near where the war had begun. Ask any military combat commander. He'll tell you that a combat stalemate is hell on troops. Nothing is gained while men die in their futile attempt to hold on to blood-soaked terrain. Americans who were fighting to hold the line had no idea that multiple intelligence failures had brought about the loss of thousands. United Nations commanders knew little about a formidable enemy that was being deployed across a vast mountainous territory that stretched toward Manchuria, while men continued to die. Those charged with gathering and disseminating intelligence were frantically grabbing straws. With odds stacked against them, the intelligence guys were doing their best, working their tails off, doing whatever they could to discover the strength, combat readiness, deployment, and intention of a capable and well-led enemy. Hastily devised intelligence plans led to employing all sorts of high-risk intelligence ops. Poorly trained partisan South Korean spies were parachuted into enemy territory. Several died while hanging in their parachute harness. Many were never heard from again. Spies inserted from submarines often failed to return for extraction. Countless other brave men perished in their futile attempt to cross a hostile battle line. The Korean War intelligence dilemma became responsible for failure of vital intelligence to reach the White House. It shouldn't take a professor of military science and tactics to understand why a frustrated commander-in-chief chomped at the bit. Truman was being pressured by war hawks in Washington to launch an all-out military offensive that would drive the Chinese army back into Manchuria. This is not to imply that all intelligence gathering was filled with incompetence, but Americans were dying. Truman simply couldn't wait for reliable intelligence to develop under the outstanding leadership of officers such as now retired Major General John K. Singlaw. Faced with his urgent need for timely and reliable intelligence, the President called to his side a few highly trained, highly talented, and capable men. Challenged by Truman, those trusted men devised a diabolical, high-risk military operation that would provide their commander-in-chief with what he needed. During early planning, Truman decided to bypass all military chains of command, members of Congress, the United Nations, as well as selected members of the Central Intelligence Agency. His curt declaration said it all. "I don't want too damn many fingers in the pie." The President made it clear that there would be no outside interference. As planning neared completion, Truman personally dubbed the mission Operation Broken Reed, a top-secret black intelligence op revealed only to those who were involved in carrying it out. Now, it's interesting to note that Broken reed is defined as something or someone that fails when relied on for support or help. Let me assure you, that definition fit Truman's intelligence dilemma perfectly. With security that equated the atomic bomb Manhattan Project, the president directed that there would be no written orders or records that could fall into the wrong hands and possibly compromise the operation. He was determined that no outsider would be given room to screw up the mission. Perhaps his own unfortunate experiences as a combat army officer had served him well. While the Korean War was raging, I was enjoying a choice assignment. No duty could have been better for a gung-ho Army platoon leader stationed in Bavaria. On 25 August 1951, I received orders to report to Headquarters European Command for a special signal assignment interview. George Brown, a youthful full colonel from the Pentagon, was on the hunt for a communications person with special skills to fill a key slot within an intelligence gathering team. Well, you could have scraped my body off the parade field when I learned that the special signal assignment would transport me into the midst of a fierce war being waged halfway around the world. After Brown shared that I would have but a 50-50 chance for survival, I had a strong desire to turn tail and return to my Bavarian hideaway.